But the West's relationship with Africa has remained essentially the same for 1,000 years. Subjugation and extraction, looting and pillage. So for Lumumba or Nkrumah, it was the 1960s, but for the West, it was still the 1860s, the 1760s, the 1660s. For the West, Africa was frozen in time, and they kept it frozen in time by force. They kept it frozen in time by violence, by assassination, by coups, by invasions, and by hostage governments and collaborators. They kept it frozen in time by predatory lending, by neoliberal policy coercion, by manufactured debt and abusive trade policies. You know, when they can't send soldiers, they send consultants. So no, those great leaders weren't ahead of their time. The West stopped time in Africa. And understand this, when you arrest the forward movement of a people, when you stop them in time like that, you're not just stealing their wealth, you're stealing their future. You're robbing them of possibility. You're burying generations that have not even been born yet under the rubble of your exploitation. Because what could have been created, what could have been discovered, what could have been achieved, it never gets a chance to exist. The mind of Thomas Sankara, the determination of Patrice Lumumba, the vision of Nkrumah, these weren't anomalies. They're the normal, natural, healthy state of a decolonized mind, of a liberated mind coming from a liberated people. They're examples of what Africa would have been, should have been, and inshallah bi'ithnillah still will be. But the West systematically crushed the conditions necessary even for normalcy to flourish. You see, you don't just kill the leaders when you kill the leaders or when you overthrow the leaders. You steal the future that those leaders could build. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran that when you kill one person unjustly, it's as if you killed all of mankind. Well, that isn't just metaphorically true. In the case of the leaders that the West has destroyed in Africa, they also destroyed millions of lives along with them. Millions of living and unborn lives have been destroyed in terms of their hopes, their opportunities, their rights, their freedom, their independence, their sovereignty. Well, you can trace the carnage going on right now in Congo today, all the way back to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. They assassinate the idea. They assassinate the man who represents the idea, so that future generations will look back and go, well, you know, they tried and they failed, so we better not bother. It's psychological warfare across time. Because if you can make a people believe that liberation is impossible, if you can make them believe that wanting sovereignty is naive and that dignity is an unrealistic hope, then you don't even have to conquer them anymore. They'll remain conquered inside themselves. They have the relative power to steal Africa's future by prolonging its past by force. But as I've talked about many times, the West's relative power is receding. That old wolf still has fangs, but the global South is raising some young lions of their own today. They're reviving the spirit of Lumumba and Sankara and Nkrumah. Your grip on Africa is being pried open. And yes, of course, I'm talking about Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. You know, it's often only in retrospect that we recognize the magnitude of a figure who shifts the course of history. It shifts the course of events in the world. But if anyone's paying attention, you can all see that Ibrahim Traore is clearly one of the most consequential leaders, not just in Africa, not just in the Muslim world, but in the entire global South and in fact in the world. Ibrahim Traore led a coup against a government that was subservient to its foreign masters. You know, there's been many coups across the continent, but usually those just replaced one neo-colonial agent with another, usually. But Ibrahim Traore is different. He's not just changing the government. He is uprooting the whole system of neo-colonial domination. And he's succeeding. He's understood what many people have failed to grasp, which is that independence is meaningless if you don't sever the control of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. He's understood that security is a myth as long as it depends on the military patronage of your former colonizers. And he's understood that sovereignty is impossible under the shadow of Western tutelage. He's not merely a head of state. Ibrahim Traore is the revolutionary archetype of the 21st century. He was forged in the reality of Western-backed insurgency and Western economic warfare and propaganda. Because, today the fight for freedom is not just waged by armies anymore, but by narratives and by resource policies and by alliances and by collective sovereignty. This is pragmatism in service to principle. This again is the methodology of Middle Nation. It's engagement without submission, cooperation without subjugation. It's trade-offs without selling out. He also understands, crucially, that Africa's liberation cannot be rented from outside. It has to be rooted in the reclamation of Africa's own wealth. His moves to exert control over Burkina Faso's gold, building indigenous defense capacity and food sovereignty, these aren't just political decisions. These are acts of civilizational self-respect. It's a declaration that Africa's children will no longer be bled dry for the enrichment of Western imperial capital. We see Ibrahim Traoré as a brother, not simply because of his faith, but also because of his fight. Because he embodies the spirit of the Quranic guidance to stand firmly for justice, even if it is against your own selves, even if it is against those who are in power, and even if it is against the odds. Burkina Faso isn't just a battleground today for the Burkinabe people. It's the front line in a global struggle for liberation. What Ibrahim Traoré is doing is echoing in the Sahel, in Niger, in Mali, across Africa, across the Ummah, across the global south, and across the world. Every oppressed people around the world can now look to Burkina Faso and to Ibrahim Traoré and say liberation looks like it's actually possible. But obviously, the global order trembles at the prospect that anyone is going to follow his example. They're afraid of his courage and his clarity and his defiance in the face of Western power and Western threats, and they should be afraid of that. They should tremble because they know the jig is up. But we know that when they get scared, they get dangerous, and Ibrahim Traoré is under severe threat. There's already been something like 20 attempts on his life since coming to power. They just stopped a coup from happening last week, organized by the Americans and by the French, right there in the French embassy. Because a free Africa is just something that old wolf can't take. They've been keeping Africa in the past for so long that they know that if they let Africa get away from them, then they're going to be the ones who are consigned to history. The chains that have been holding Africa down all this time are also the only things holding the West up. So now America has said that they want to arrest him. They've already tried to take him out more than once, like I said. Now they're trying to smear him. They're trying to attack him. They sent the head of AFRICOM to the Ivory Coast a couple of days ago, which is a neighbor of Burkina Faso and which is known to have allegedly anyway participated in the killing of Thomas Sankara. Allegedly they participated in the coups or helped to organize the coups against coup attempts against Ibrahim Traoré, and the Western sycophantic leader that was overthrown by Ibrahim Traoré is in exile in the Ivory Coast right now. So they're getting ready for something. Understand, Ibrahim Traoré isn't just fighting insurgents and militants in the desert. No. Every time he has to meet with some Western diplomat or politician or ambassador, he's fighting that same enemy. They're just wearing a suit and tie and meeting in some conference room or some embassy somewhere. But it's the same enemy that he's fighting in the desert. He doesn't have a meeting with any Western official except it's a kind of combat. Imagine. The same ones that are smiling at you or from across the table, those are the same ones who are also paying mercenaries to kill you. Burkina Faso, as I say, represents decentralization. It represents variance. It represents a threat to the power consolidation. They see Ibrahim Traoré as a glitch in their system, but their system is a virus on humanity. Burkina Faso represents not only the promise of African liberation, but liberation for all of us. And the instinct for liberation is not a bug in the human software. It's a feature. So everyone should do whatever they can, and we should all do all we can to try to defend and protect Ibrahim Traoré. Because wallahi, this is a matter of self-defense. Ibrahim Traoré isn't simply a political figure. He's a turning point.
When you kill strong African leaders, you kill generations. You bury the future that could have been born. Let those words sink in. Because what you just heard is not from a Pan-African revolutionary, not from a Pan-African activist, but from a white scholar standing in the West, teaching his people the truth that Africans has been screaming for decades. Let's not sugarcoat it. from Patrice Lumumba in Congo, to Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. Every time an African leader dares to dream outside of Western control, they are marked for elimination. And now we have Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, a young, fearless, determined leader, trying to break the chains of neo-colonialism, trying to rewrite the story of Africa's future. The West fears him. They want to unalive him. They fear him because he's teaching people the truth. He is teaching African leaders to reject foreign puppets, to reject foreign aid, to stand up on their own, to unite. And now the West is circling. They want to repeat the same process. They killed colonialism with flags and national anthems, but replaced it with debt traps from the IMF, military bases for your protection, corrupt leaders trained in Europe, CFA franc, a colonial currency still controlled from France. This is not freedom. This is a silent war, and we are still bleeding. Africa's pain is a global pain. To my brothers and sisters in America, in the UK, in the Caribbean, Africa's pain is not separate from yours. When Africa is weak, black people all over the world stay at the bottom. When Africa rises, the entire world gets stronger. So to my people across the world, don't just celebrate African culture, defend it. Your voice matters. Your platform matters. When you speak up, the world listens. So use your voice to say, hands off Traore, hands off Africa. The era of control is over. This is Woken Africa. If this moved you, kindly share it and let them know that Africa, we are not asleep, all right? Thank you so much for tuning in today's video. If you found value in what you shared, kindly consider subscribing and turn on notifications so you never miss any update from my videos. Your support really means a lot, and it helps us keep bringing you more insightful content. Thanks again, and see you in the next one, my darlings.